What cheer, y'all? Continue on with our Preakness 150 contender profiles. We're going to talk about the seven-hole entrant, Sandman, who was the second choice amongst the betting public in the Kentucky Derby and didn't work out terribly well. Ran okay, I guess you could say, finished seventh. But anyway, this one is trained by Mark Casse and got Christian Torres in the irons. He has been a mercurial horse all through the Triple Crown Trail. I think we could all agree on that. He's had his moments for sure with the Arkansas Derby, when he finally put it all together. But it left us with questions, and I think they were answered in the Derby. It just, the Arkansas Louisiana Derby perhaps just weren't that great, and it was borne out by how things happened in the Derby. But we'll take a look for the Preakness, and we'll see the pedigree's not a problem at all. This horse can run all day. We're not going to speculate to the contrary. He's going to get the mile and 3/16 without any difficulty at all. He does have the highest genetic strength value score in the group, but we have to consider what they do on the track. And we'll take a look at the running lines, and we'll see that he's it's just he's had trouble at 2, he had trouble at 3, and he's had his moments without a doubt, but he's also a tappet, and you can't lose sight of that. I mean, he's got he certainly has talent without a doubt, but he's his own worst enemy a lot of times too. He has trouble in the gate. We all know that on occasion. Don't know that he really had too much of it in the Derby, and he took to the slop. I think he was okay, but he was no match for the top three, and I didn't think he was. That Arkansas Derby really, while being his best race, I think exposed some things about Sandman, and one of them was, if you look at the running lines, his early pace fractions were the best he'd ever had. Now, sometimes that's a good thing because that tells you a horse is progressing, they're getting better. Particularly with horses who run late, once you start seeing their early fractions when they can get a little more engaged, it tells you that they're really getting it. And it was borne out to a certain degree. You do see at 3 years old, since the optional claimer in December at 2, he has gotten better with every single start as far as his class rating has improved. 118, 119, 120, 123, and then the Derby 120 isn't bad. But what was the issue? The issue was he finally ran against a really good field in the Kentucky Derby. You see that was borne out by the 118 race rating, the highest he'd faced, and he was 7th. He was not able to factor in the race. If you look at the race ratings of his Derby preps, and again, this is a knock on the Arkansas preps, they were not that great. They were rated lower than most, 116, 117, 116. And so he was getting better, but he was also running against like fields. In other words, they weren't necessarily stepping up and getting better. The fields weren't, as he was improving. Now, it's still improvement. That's true. But you want to see it when the stakes are raised, when the competition gets better. That's when you really get excited about a horse improving. Now, we look here, and you see that late fraction. You see it 94, 95 in the Rebel and the Southwest Stakes, and you see their early fractions, 78, 87, 81, 94, back of the pack, right? We all, of course, remember the Southwest Stakes where he broke terribly and closed like a freight train to get up for second. And he did so again in the Rebel Stakes. He closed very well from the back of the pack. Arkansas Derby got a little bit, was a little bit more engaged, ran a little bit more early on. But here's the problem with the Arkansas Derby, and I pointed this out in our elements of handicapping for the Derby. Look at those fractions, 45 and 110. That's smoking. And he drew off, and he won the race, but he didn't do so in a way that told you that he was going to be really formidable in the Derby, because he had everything go his way in that race, number one. And number two, look at that late fraction, 88. And we pointed this out in the Elements of Handicapping. That was, I believe, he was 51 and change feet per second. That's not good enough to win a race like the Derby. And look, in the Derby, here was the problem. He reverted again to lingering at the back of the pack, which wasn't a big surprise. But look at that late fraction, 74, his lowest. And you also note that had been declining over the last three races. So a very disappointing Derby in some respects, but in another aspect for me, that was about what I expected. I was not high on Sandman for the Derby, as you'll recall. The Metallica fans, I'm sorry. I know he's your horse, but we can't bet horses on the name only. They have to do it on the track. And I was just pretty certain that coming out of those lower rated races in Arkansas, he wasn't going to match up against the top horses in the Derby, and he didn't. Now, the Preakness is a different story. I don't think this is as good a field. I think we could agree that it is in the Derby, but you got journalism there, and I think the Derby demonstrated that he's not as good as journalism. And will he have some pace to run to in this race? Perhaps, but I have a feeling it's going to be a very similar scenario that you had in the Derby. It's going to be a little bit above average, but it's not going to be a track meet early on. And for that reason, and you couple that with the fact that they seem to skew Pimlico to speed on Preakness Day. That's the way it's gone. You notice the last two runners, National Treasure and Seize the Grave, both won the race from the front end. So I'm not sure, being a late runner, that he's really got an optimum scenario. And we know that Sandman needs pace to run to. So to me, there's a lot of knocks against Sandman coming into this race. I think he'll get the distance. I think he'll run fine. But do I see a miraculous leap forward where he can just come blazing home to win this race? No, I don't. And I think he's going to be an underlay from a betting standpoint as well. I think we're all certain of that, based upon his name. Now, we take a look at our first take. Well, the positive is he does have a late kick, and he'll be coming late. So, I mean, I think, will that get him as a potential candidate to get into the money? Sure, especially in a smaller field. I think so. You don't have Baeza in here. You don't have Sovereignty. You don't have, class-wise, I think he's a good fit in this race. I just think there's other things that tell me that the scenario I don't think is necessarily a good one for him, and I don't think he has the kick to get it done. Not to beat journalism, for certain. And if they do slow it down, well, that's curtains for him as well. We know that, and he's not going to be able to close against a moderate or just an average pace. I don't think we'll get that, but it is possible. So I think race shape-wise, there's a lot of positives. Yes, he fits in here class-wise, and yes, he's got a good late kick, and there's a glimmer possibly that he could win this race if something goes wrong with journalism, but I don't think so. The negatives, class, he's not as good as journalism. He's as good as some of the other horses in this race, but he's not as good as journalism. He's not even as good as River Thames, I don't think, class-wise. And so that's a bit of a negative to me. Running back in 2 weeks, I mean, hey, if Mark Casse thinks he can run, I'll say he can. But it is a question whether he can be as effective as he normally is on his best day, let's say the Arkansas Derby, which I don't think would be good enough here, maybe that hampers him a little bit. And finally, of course, maturity, because he is a tappet. He seems to be getting it, getting it. He seems to be getting together. Is it as much of an issue as it was before? Maybe go back to, say, the Rebel Stakes. No, I don't think so. He may, but it's still lingering there because he's a tappet. We've seen Tappet Trice, the poster child for tappets. World of talent, and sometimes he puts it all together, and sometimes you can't figure out what the hell is why he's not running better. So that's always going to be lingering there. One other thing I'll throw in there is this horse has no tactical speed. He's a freight train, much the same as American Promise. He is not. If he has any difficulty and he gets stopped, it's going to be very difficult for him to re-rally. Now, this is a smaller field, so that's probably why I didn't put it down as a negative, because it isn't as much of an issue. I think he will be able to get to where he needs to. They're probably going to keep him to the outside, keep him out of trouble, and rely on his stamina, and hopefully that he'll put a good kick together to get home. But it is something there that's an issue, particularly for big horses like him, who, once they get going, if they get stopped at all, it's curtains. So I'm not very high on Sandman. I think you can see that. I don't think there's a lot of positives for him in this race. However, he does have the talent to factor in this race, but I would consider him to be more of an underneath candidate. And at what is likely to be a pretty short price, he's a difficult play, but one you sort of have to make if you want to bottom out in your trifecta or your superfecta. So I hope this helps you with your own assessment of Sandman. And we'll have, I believe we've got Heart of Honor is our last one, the Japanese import, to take a look at, and we'll be covering him shortly, so stay tuned for that. Certainly, if you do like content like this, please like and subscribe. And again, thanks so much to the growth, all of you who grow our community and continue to chime in. Love to hear that. Please keep it up. We will have a full card episode with best bets value plays for Preakness Day. We will have something for the Black Eyed Susan, as well as a post with a final assessment of the Preakness by itself. So plenty of content on the way. Stay tuned for that. That's it from here. I'll talk to you soon, and until then, be well.